My girlfriend's parents arranged a marriage for us despite us only being together for 2 weeks. When Maya's parents invited me over for dinner last Sunday, I figured they just wanted to get to know their daughter's new boyfriend better. We'd only been dating since we met at that coffee shop downtown 2 weeks ago. Her dad, Michael, shook my hand firmly and her mom, Linda, hugged me like I was already family. They seemed nice, maybe a little too enthusiastic, but I figured parents just got excited about their daughter's relationships. The dinner conversation was completely normal until dessert, when Michael cleared his throat and said they had something important to discuss. Maya, we've been thinking about this carefully, and we believe Tyler would make an excellent husband for you. We'd like to begin planning the wedding for next spring. I nearly choked on my coffee and felt my face go red. Marriage? We'd been on exactly 4 dates and barely knew each other. I looked at Maya, expecting her to laugh or tell her parents they were being ridiculous. Instead, she just smiled calmly and nodded like this was completely normal, like we'd been discussing marriage for months instead of barely knowing each other's middle names. I tried to object, saying we just started dating and needed more time, but Michael waved me off with this confident smile. When you know, he said firmly, and we know you're perfect for our Maya. Linda nodded in agreement, saying they had excellent instincts about these things. The whole conversation felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life, but what really disturbed me was how prepared they seemed for this moment. Linda disappeared for a minute and came back with a thick wedding planning binder that was already half filled with venue options, vendor contacts, and detailed budget spreadsheets. Maya seemed completely unfazed by the timeline her mother was proposing, nodding along as Linda discussed catering options and flower arrangements like we'd already agreed to get married. I felt like I was watching actors perform a play I hadn't been given the script for. Over the next few days, I started noticing weird things about Maya's behavior that I'd somehow missed before. She never seemed surprised by anything her parents said or did regarding our relationship, like she expected their involvement. When I mentioned feeling overwhelmed about the marriage discussion, she just smiled and said her parents had really good instincts about people and their relationships. She also started dropping casual comments about how her last few relationships had ended badly, like she'd been waiting patiently for the right person to come along. But the strangest thing was how much Maya's parents already knew about personal details of my life. Linda mentioned my job at the accounting firm downtown, which I was certain I'd never told Maya about. Michael asked about my college roommate Steve by name, even though I'd never mentioned him in any of our conversations. When I asked Maya how her parents knew these specific details, she said she must have mentioned them after I told her and I'd just forgotten. But I had a really good memory for conversations, and I definitely hadn't told her about Steve or given her many details about my work. I decided to test something the next time I saw her. I told Maya a completely fake story about my supposed pet dog growing up, a golden retriever named Buddy who loved playing fetch in our backyard. The next time I visited her parents' house, Linda asked how Buddy was doing and if I missed having a dog around. Maya had told them about a pet I'd never owned. Either she was making up random stories about me to her parents, or something much stranger was happening here. I started paying closer attention to details in their house during my visits. There were wedding magazines scattered on the coffee table that looked well-worn and heavily bookmarked, not recently purchased. The guest bedroom had several boxes stacked in the corner that were labeled wedding decorations in Linda's handwriting. When I casually asked Maya when her parents had started collecting all that wedding stuff, she said they'd always been prepared and organized for her wedding someday, whenever it happened to come along. But those magazines were all current issues from the past few months, and some had sticky notes marking specific local vendors and venues in our immediate area, almost like they'd been planning something specific rather than just daydreaming. Last night, I decided to do some deeper investigation and found something that made my stomach drop. Maya's social media accounts going back 6 months were filled with posts about being ready to settle down and find the right person to marry. But the timeline didn't make any sense with our relationship. She'd posted about wanting to get married and start planning a wedding just 3 days before we supposedly met randomly at that coffee shop downtown. I called the coffee shop this morning and asked if they kept security footage from their cameras. The manager said they archived everything for insurance purposes, and when I asked to review the footage from the day Maya and I first met, I discovered what had really happened that morning.